say it at the same time. Oh, we're live.
We're live. Hi, everyone. Hey, good morning. Good afternoon, depending on where you are.
Yes. Good. A good day to you all.
Good day to you.
Yes.
What's up, everyone?
Hey, you may be wondering, why are we all dressed like various different institutions of knowledge and belief across Planetos?
And the answer is because we're imagining feasts and festivals of ice and fire today, many of which are deeply related to belief systems.
Yeah.
And assembled, we have three folklorists to elaborate on the theories and holidays and festivals that exist in the text, as well as what we hope is beyond.
Yes. We have good reasons for it.
Do we want to introduce ourselves real quick?
Sure. I'm Daisy. I'm Daisy Allstone. Hi, I'm a folklorist, and I also cosplay Joffrey Baratheon. You may know me. my only two accomplishments.
Yeah.
I am Maester Domeric. I'm Dom. Let's see. I forged my chain at Indiana University. Where I met Lydia, where she was forging 2 links of her chain. Right. We both did our masters there. I did my PhD there, and let's see. The pink chain is for hot dogs, which is what I wrote my dissertation about.
My rose gold link was forged in a hot dog eating competition.
Exactly. That's what. Exactly.
That's why it's shaped that way.
I am Lydia. I forged my maester's chain at Memorial University of Newfoundland in Canada. And I am currently working in a library and getting my 4th degree in library science because liberal arts degrees are hard to market.
Daisy, you are currently at the Citadel.
At the Ohio State University.
Yes.
I didn't say that earlier, but that's where I am in Columbus. It's important because there's a "the" in front of it.
Canada.
Yeah, and Canadian representation.
Rahala.
Let's go Newfoundland in their unique time zone.
Yes, this very special 30-minute time zone.
So, like we alluded to, we all study folklore, and we all know each other through Ice and Fire Con as much as we do academic folklore conferences. Yeah. We run in a very specific circle, and it was eventually we were just the three of us going to meet each other.
We are the Venn diagram. we are the center of the Venn diagram.
Yeah, no. Exactly. And who wants to introduce the idea of our panel today?
Well, we're going to talk about what folklore is, but we're also going to talk about some of the feasts and festivals explicitly mentioned in the books, sometimes tangentially mentioned in the books, and then we kind of took our imaginations and went a little further with it. Some feasts and festivals we thought could reasonably be implied based on other ones in the text. And we're making real world comparisons with them and kind of imagining some of the rituals and customs that could potentially be part of these.
That's very, very concise, Lydia. That's why your chain is so long.
I was like, that was
so long
perfect.
You can't see it.
So like you said, let's get into some of the we're going to get into some of the feasts and holidays and festivals and traditions that George has explicitly written about. And then we're going to fill in the gaps on the other ones that must exist, and we're going to draw from real world inspirations for that. But first, like Lydia alluded to, we're going to talk a little bit about what is folklore itself. So
here's our table of contents.
Our table of contents. We're gonna look first at like we said, we're gonna give you a brief primer on what is folklore, what is a festival, and what a festival accomplishes. And then we're going to go through, Westeros. We're going to talk about the holidays and festivals that George gives us in the Faith of the Seven. Then we'll fill out the rest. We're going to do some old gods, theory craft some old gods festivals, and then a brief excursion across the narrow sea to talk about some of the festivals of the free cities.
We've got a lot to cover, so buckle up, guys.
Strap in. We're talking at rapid speed. Let's go. All right, chat, you ready?
I'm ready.
First off, Lydia, do you want to talk about what is folklore?
Though this is a word that a lot of people use informally, it is notoriously difficult to define in the same way that culture is really hard to define, which is why we've put this little bullet point there in that way. Historically, folklorists had very classist ideas about who are the folk, like, oh, those peasant people over there. I don't have culture because I am an academic. But that's not true. In fact, all of us are participating in culture all the time. Folklore is obviously these two words. It's a good old Anglo-Saxon compound, if you like. And briefly, it is informal culture. So I think one of the best examples are in-group jokes. We have so many in-group jokes at the con. The longer that you've been at the con, the more of these in-group jokes you get acclimated to. And so we kind of constitute a folk group together, a community, and we have oral traditions that we pass down. Obviously with the advent of, yes, macaroni in the chat.
Oh boy.
Perfect example. That's a recently developed
Yes.
folklore.
And if I can say at the same time, no one at HBO who's like working on Hot D or David and Dan, they wouldn't know why macaroni is funny and how it relates
Right.
to A Song of Ice and Fire, because it's our
Yeah.
in-group thing.
It is unique to our community. It's unique to Ice and Fire Con. It's not a joke that would necessarily make sense at Con of Thrones or at Dragon Con,
Oh, God.
etc. Yeah.
Unless members of the
Sure.
Ice and Fire Con group
Right.
were traveling.
Yeah.
And transmitting that
Yeah.
folklore perhaps in new
Which is-
contexts to new communities, new groups,
Which is
etc.
My favorite part of folklore is how it's shared with other people, because I think that that's what makes it even more distinct from other kinds of culture
Mhm.
that you might study.
Yeah.
We're sharing it in live chats and side conversations and Discord groups and to each other in DMs, but that's different than a lot of ways that other types of culture are shared.
Yes.
Sure.
So,
And you
so-
talk about other, you mentioned other types of culture, and it's important to remember we talked about jokes as our example. We talk, I think we kind of have like a fairy tale motif on the slides, but that not necessarily all spoken culture can be
sure.
folklore. Yeah.
Material culture, like cosplays, also.
Matt.
Matt,
yeah.
don't spoil our next slide because we're about to go there.
Yes.
Galleon Height is peak folklore.
Mainly, we're
Yeah.
going to talk about how festival is a form of folklore. Festival is, a combination of oral tradition and customs and material culture and all of that just all at once over an extended period of time. Are we ready for the next slide?
Yes.
Good transition.
Yeah. What is a festival?
It is all these things.
all these different things. Beverly Stolce, we cited her in the corner, says
Yeah.
a festival is it is participatory, meaning you have to opt in and you have to start participating. It's
Can we do an example of each of these, but it's Skelly Night?
yeah, let's do an example of each of these, but it's the festival that we attend every year, Ice and Fire Con.
Yeah.
So participatory, you can go to Ice and Fire Con. You don't necessarily have to do Skelly Night. You don't have to get there on Thursday. But the people who opt into doing Skelly Night all leave as a family because it is this giant group bonding celebration that happens first thing of the con. It's a public event.
Anyone can
meaning
come.
Anyone can
Yeah.
come, but you do. But there's like a whole group thing. Whereas you need to have at least a little bit of a conversation, understanding of A Song of Ice and Fire, in order to get it. That being said, Mike the bartender is a member of our Ice and Fire Con family, even though I'm pretty sure he hadn't like read the books, just because he had like been at the event enough times that he's one of us now.
Yes.
Calendrical, same time of year, and we're gonna have to problematize the idea of calendrical
Because seasons in the world.
Yeah, they just
Right.
don't. They're
Yeah,
not the
normally
same.
we say calendrical in our universe. That means it happens the same
Right.
time of year, the same season. But of course,
Mhm.
seasons and time of year don't happen
They're different.
the way we experience it in Westeros. So there'll be a lot to talk about there. Expresses values or a worldview, which I think is very important for festival.
Nerd culture.
Nerd
Yeah.
culture. The fact that we've all found each other through our love of these books. I mean, it really is taking an idea and celebrating about it for an extended period of time. That's a good way to think of a festival. The next two kind of go together: complex in structure and multiplicity of rituals and events. You have all these little things that to the untrained eye look like you're just doing gibberish. You have a
Where
tequila
is
party,
the
you have a
schedule?
stick horse fight,
Yeah.
shouting "Where's the schedule?" Macaroni. But the longer you actually spend at the festival and you spend in that group, you start to understand the little nuances of the group's culture and how the festival reflects all of these things.
And if I may
And-
add on to that, culture in this context is also emergent. It is not
Yeah.
a fixed thing. It is something we are constantly creating collaboratively as a community.
Yes.
And we all participate and contribute to that.
It has been less than 24 hours since we decided that Hot Pie's birth name was Horatio Pastry, but it's canon. It's culture
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, now.
And then celebration. I mean, definitely the most fun part is that no matter what is going on, these complex rituals and celebrations and worldview expressions, it's a party. And
Yeah.
that's
then
what draws you there.
An upending of day-to-day mundane life, right?
Yeah.
This is like kind of a new register of experience. Maybe you're setting aside some time from your job to come and do this, etc.
Oh, I don't. Do we have a
TM,
trademark?
TM,
Can we
TM,
say
TM,
trademark?
Somebody buy the domain.
Ready for the next? Ready for the next one?
Yes.
Yes.
We don't have
All
much
right.
time. We have to do this.
We have
Yeah.
to do this. Functions of a festival and a Song of Ice and Fire, and in general. But yeah, three big functions. The why a festival is happening that we identified: our identity, performance, and marking cycles.
Right.
So we'll talk about a little each, and then compare it to. Yeah, we'll go meta stream on you and compare it to how this happens, for example, at Ice and FireCon. Identity, like we said, both the group and the individual, both the community that you're a part of and who you are as a person, all get expressed at festivals and by participating, and that has to do with social cohesion. That's how we maintain our group identity. It's how we
I've got a great example.
Give me your example.
The gang goes to Ice and FireCon shirts. So if you wear that anywhere else, like people are gonna be like, "What's Ice and FireCon?" But if somebody else is wearing that shirt, you're like, "Oh my gosh, friend! Like we go to the same con together," or whatever.
And they might understand it as an "It's Always Sunny" reference, but
Right.
they'll only understand part of the reference. And likewise,
Exactly.
you might get the Ice and FireCon part of it and not the Always Sunny part, which was the case for me for some time. But now I
Yeah.
We have performance as the next one, and we don't necessarily mean performance as like a staged
right.
which also
performance.
happens at Ice and FireCon.
It happens at Ice and FireCon, but it's not the kind of performance we're talking about. We're talking about agreed upon behaviors and participation.
Right.
So I don't want you thinking performance like Westeros and American
An
Musical,
American Musical.
even though that is a kind of performance that happens at Ice and FireCon.
Right.
We're talking about the way you act in the cabins and
We're talking
the random
about-
stuff you shout at each other.
We're
Sure.
talking
And
about
some-
wearing a skeleton to Skelly Night.
Yeah,
Like wearing a skeleton outfit.
that is
And-
its own performance.
And a lot of people, that I've talked to anecdotally, often say that they feel like they are their best selves at Ice and FireCon. Like maybe at their jobs, they're known as quiet people, but they kind of emerge into more vibrant, louder people at the con because we're in this heightened environment.
That's
So-
the first 2 points at once.
Yeah.
There
Whoa.
you go.
And like we alluded to in the last slide, it also marks cycles. That could be life cycles, like coming of age. It could be the seasonal or calendrical passing of the year or passing of the seasons. Or it could be religious cycles. It could be the celebrating the rebirth of of God or the coming together of your family for religious purposes once a year. It was I think a really underrated thing about Ice and FireCon. As the show was coming out, there would always be like an episode to watch on Sunday nights.
Yeah.
It would always be like a spring festival, and there would always be it felt like it was a Song of Ice and Fire time of year.
And we put 2 little asterisks again, just to remind ourselves and the audiences that seasonal and calendrical for like non-Ice and Fire world is very different than the Song of Ice and Fire world. So we'll talk about that as it becomes relevant, but it means different things. So
let's get into it.
This is what we're going to talk about.
Maps,
45
regions,
minutes.
locations, cultures.
Continents.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the 7. We're going to talk about some stuff, civic festivals in Essos, and we're going to talk about the old gods and all that jazz.
So let's start off with the faith of the 7. There are a few festivals we know about the faith of the 7, so we're going to start with the ones that get mentioned in the text. Who is starting off with this one?
You are.
I am. Great, thank you. All right, so the Father has a feast day that gets brought up in the text. The Feast of Our Father Above, which is called an auspicious day for decision making. It gets highlighted a little bit in Fire and Blood, where Unwin Peak, when he's Hand of the King, empties the dungeons and holds public executions. And we're wondering, like, okay, what do all of these things have together? What is the value or the worldview that's being expressed by having like decision day as part of the Father's feast? And our ideal is, okay, this is some sort of like patriarchal decision making day where it is like a society where men are in charge, and a way of reifying that is that the dad who is in charge of our whole society gives like father figures decision making power on the Feast of Our Father Above. So yeah, it expresses values and worldview. What it's really doing is taking fathers on earth and imbuing this like temporary authority of the Father above in order for them to make these very important decisions. So we are kind of theory-crafting here that, yeah, don't question this decision day. Could have, public executions, decision making, but perhaps contracts, betrothals, other kinds of like important life-changing decisions that fathers or kind of male patriarchal leaders would be making in Westeros. This is a good day to publicly make some of those.
And passing judgment as well, perhaps.
Yeah, because judgment being the father's thing. Yeah, a word he's always associated with. Yes. Kind of operating dichotomously to that, we have the Festival of the Mother.
Yes. In the show, Tommen arranges for Cersei's trial to happen at this time. And while that is a show reference, it kind of made me think maybe he's hoping to appeal to divine mercy at this time. And so with the wheels turning there, I started thinking about this as a festival that is in dichotomy with the Feast of the Father. You have a feast of ritualized judgment and you have a feast of ritualized mercy. And we have a lot of real world parallels for this. Yom Kippur is a Jewish time of atonement, for example. And an example that I can talk about from my own lived experience is in the Eastern Orthodox Church. Before the season of Lent, or kind of as a kickoff to the season of Lent, there's something called Forgiveness Sunday. I know there's a Catholic equivalent to this, Divine Mercy Sunday. In the Orthodox tradition, every person in a church community must approach every other person, make eye contact with them, and say, "Forgive me, a sinner." And the other person says, "God forgives, forgive me also, I am a sinner. May God have mercy on us both." And in that way, it's a very egalitarian kind of a thing, because whether you're the littlest child in the congregation or a priest, you have to ask forgiveness from everybody. And that part of the function of that is to allow a community to persist and to kind of let tensions go between people, which of course you have to do to survive, right? So next.
Oh, well, that is to say, Is Cersei about to do mass murder
Yes.
on Super Forgiveness Atonement Day?
The
That would
Mother's
be her
Day
style.
Massacre.
The
It
Mother's
would
Day,
be.
yeah. Why that's not called the Mother's Day Massacre is beyond us, and
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
the point of the whole PowerPoint. Next, we have
Next.
the Maiden's Day.
Yes, we have Maiden's Day. This is probably a holiday that centers on purity and charity and the maidenly arts. And we definitely know that Arya Stark would have hated this, hated this day so much. But yeah, so we know about the Maiden's Day feast from a couple different ways. In A Feast for Crows, there's only maidens are allowed in the sept, and there's white candles and garlands on the statue. And then in Fire and Blood, for those who've read it, there is a sort of Maiden's Day cattle show, as we called it, but for Aegon the Third's wedding, or one of the weddings, later weddings, there's a big gathering of, I think, 31 maids, from noble maids from across the land, who come and reveal themselves to him, and he gets to decide who he wants to marry, and that's challenging and not unlike the real world parallel of a debutante ball. Anybody who wants to guess which one of these people in this bottom picture is me?
It's not who you think it is.
you get 3 guesses.
I was surprised.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is also a holiday that I think varies really greatly based on your wealth and like what social status you have. So noble families might have a ball for this to try to create those political marriages that Gurm often creates. And what else we got? Thinking about Charity and Marjorie, I think that in the real life parallel with debutante balls, there's a whole connection to philanthropy and volunteerism, and I think that Marjorie is a really good example of this. Like, part of her purity is doing good and help for others, because she visits orphanages and brings kids toys and all that stuff. And then really, though, it centers around your marriage eligibility, and are you being a good wife and good woman, or do you have qualities that would make you a good woman and an eventual mother?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I got there.
So those are 3 that we have like textual references to. Now we're kind of having some fun crafting some theories based on those 3 to what the other 4 feasts of the 7 would look like. Lydia, you got the warrior?
Okay. Obviously, there would be some kind of a feast where it focused on fitness to help people become fit for the defense of the realm. And Highland game competitions are an excellent real world example of this, or have antecedents that are like that, right? These are fitness games. I was also thinking about, in the UK, there are Dover's games, which involve an entire village sometimes running down a hill chasing a wheel of cheese. You know, that is not for the faint of heart, I have
It's cardio, yeah.
Yes. In Mongolia, there is a sporting event called Naadam, and a lot of traditional sports are done during that time, like archery, or as depicted here, wrestling. You can see the Speedos and vests worn by all these traditional Mongolian wrestlers. But this is all about reifying values of courage, strength, honor. You can also imagine there being class distinctions in Westeros about how this might be celebrated. It seems more likely that in a small folk context, this might look more like Highland games, but in an upper class context, this probably looks more like tourneys and jousting, right? Because those are things that help you to become adept at the skills you need to defend the realm.
Next, we have the Crone.
Maybe Lydia and I can tag team this one.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so Crone's Day, this is probably most similar to Grandparents' Day, or Respect for Elders' Day, as this adorable sign that Lydia found indicates. But yeah, so we thought that this could be a day where you do supportive things, give gifts, celebrate the elders in your life for their knowledge and care. And there are a lot of different parallels. One parallel we found was with Santa Lucia Day, which I used to do also when I was a little kid. It's a Swedish thing. In my family, it was. And you would go around and serve cookies to all of the older relatives, which I think is kind of cute. And then, Lydia, you found this parallel in Japan, China, Korea.
Oh, well, just that particularly at the 60th birthday, but then as you hit other 10-year milestones after that, it's a particular celebration of that family member. Like, yay, you made it to 60. Yay, you made it to 70. And the older you get, the bigger that becomes. There are traditionalized foods that you eat at that time. With the Santa Lucia thing, that could very easily have like Maiden's Day parallels. But part of the reason that I wanted to put it here was because, you know, the crone is always depicted as having this lamp of wisdom with which she leads the little children. And I was thinking, what if there was some kind of a custom, probably with small folk in villages, where either the oldest member of the village or a child dressed as a crone has a little parade and leads the children holding some kind of a lantern or a lamp or something. And that's kind of why I was thinking about the Santa Lucia Day image.
It's
but
so
also,
cute.
briefly, though, I was also wondering who counts as a crone in this
Yeah.
world, because how long do people live in Westeros? Like you have got your ghosts of High Heart and your old nans, but they're also not so common either. And so that's just kind of an open question, I think.
Yeah, who would count as the crone? And then especially thinking about like the class correlation, like usually the more wealth you have, the older you become. And so I'm curious if it's like what that would look like in Westeros too.
Mm-hmm. Good question.
Next up, we have the Smith's Day. And Lydia, you've got Smith's Day too, right?
I whatever you want, man. Whatever you want.
Well, let's start off and say we didn't quite know if like Smith's Day was a day on or a day off. Perhaps.
Yeah.
And if it was like
Labor
perhaps
Day.
it's Labor Day and everyone and every artist in King's Landing is allowed to take the day off. But we did discover a real world equivalent that's very much a day on, like a participatory activity that happens at a that occurs. And Lydia, do you want to say a little bit about Durga Puja?
Yeah. Another thing quickly is that Smith's Day, it could literally be about only smiths, but it could also be about artisans and makers more broadly in Westeros. And we know that the Rhoynar taught the Andals how to make iron, right? And so if smiths are being commemorated, it seems reasonable that there would be some kind of a Rhoynish influence in that, some kind of allusion to water magic. And that doesn't mean that the Westerosi would be like consciously thinking, oh yes, this is because of the Rhoynar giving us, you know, whatever, because, well, in fact, that history is not often examined closely.
And this happens with a lot of our festival traditions.
Yes.
We don't stop and say, oh, this is because we got this from another culture and it got translated into, no, we just kind of celebrate it. Yeah, exactly.
This is because of colonialism.
Yeah.
So, but an interesting possible real world parallel is Durga Puja in Hinduism. And this is a festival commemorating the fierce warrior goddess Durga. She has defeated her enemy, a demon lord, and that could also be compared to the smith, right? The smith is making weapons for the defense of the realm, etc. But in this ritual, effigies of Durga are made out of clay, and they're decorated elaborately and beautifully and strewn with flowers. And then on the 10th day of the festival, these effigies are submerged in local bodies of water, usually rivers, and then they dissolve and they return back to the earth. And it's said that Durga is going home or she's returning to the cosmos. And so that seems like that could work really well with some kind of an illusion. If there were, for example, in a Westerosi parallel, people making effigies of the smith and then submerging those, covering them in snow, be it a year of winter, or putting them in a lake or a river if it's a warmer season, that could kind of tie in really well with Rhoynish ideas.
I'll say, Guilty Undertaker, you predicted our next slide.
And we got to do something for Strangers Day. I
Yeah.
think we bounce around a lot of ideas about how you celebrate this a god that you don't like talking about.
Yeah.
But Lydia came up with some ideas about what the kind of nuance between how celebrating the stranger might work.
Yeah. Again, death is scary, right? Death is an ever-present force in this world. George is not shy to kill people off. So like so many of these other festivals, I am sure there are class-based distinctions in how people celebrate this. Upper class people are probably more likely to do something like visit their family crypts and remember those who have passed. But it seems likely that there would also be an element of subversion or play because we have so many of those parallels in our real world, ranging from Samhain to Dia de los Muertos to Halloween. There's a playfulness with death and there's a liminality, a crossing of barriers. So where we have, for example, trick-or-treating in our world, the stranger is associated with guest right too, right? So there is a hospitality dimension there. So I was thinking about mummering, which is kind of, it has some parallels with trick-or-treating, but it's a tradition that happens in Newfoundland in the winter, actually. And you can see, according to this image, people dress up in such a way that you really cannot tell who is who. And in small communities, people historically went door to door and asked for beer or food in exchange for not vandalizing them, or possibly in exchange for doing a little play or singing a song, creating fellowship in that way. So you could see something like that happening in villages in exchange for guest right, I think.
Yeah. Now, all of these festivals that we've brought up so far have we've kind of had to allow an interpretation for these where they could happen at any season, but the same time of year. Like the Maester decided, like astrological cycle that like counts a year, but is not always the passing of 4 seasons like we experience it on regular Earth. That being said, we're about to get a little different once we get into the old gods, where we have an idea for old gods festivals being feasts on the first day of seasons. So it wouldn't happen every year, but it would happen every time the season changes. You would have the people of the North would have this festival. Yeah, rather than the calendrical events that could feasibly happen the same weekend, like week 10 of the year every year is X of the Seven's feast. This is like not a yearly occasion, but it is like a sort of seasonal feast. And we would also, being that it is this connection with nature, especially with the old gods, kind of their thing. We want to tie all of these festivals back to involving nature and the environment and bodily indulgences. Now, how do we know this? Because we do have one old gods festival from the text, and we're gonna first start off about the harvest feast in A Clash of Kings that happens in Winterfell.
Dom, you should talk about it because you did some work. You did some work on the page.
Okay. We'll get there. So yeah. Famously, you have the Bannermen of the North, the ones who aren't in the South, with Robb showing up to Winterfell to have a big harvest feast, pledging hearth, heart, and harvest. In the words that the reeds say, like the ancient vow they make to Bran at the feast. Hearth, and harvest, or Firefieldian food. Perhaps like you're prepping for a long night. Like this is all right. The autumn is starting, and autumn in the South can mean one thing, but autumn in the North is we need to start getting our act together because. Like who knows, we could have another long night if we take this for granted. So it's all about showing up to the festival, feeding one another for winter, lowborn and highborn all having each other's back. There's also though this kind of idea that this is like a very like transitional season. that sort of the clear delineation between the realm of the living and the realm of the dead is sort of blurring in autumn. That reflects in many festivals we have in the real world, but also you kind of see it in the Harvest Feast, whereas they're singing the long night that ended. Joe Magician has a wonderful essay about the Harvest Feast, and specifically this song is my favorite part of it, where it talks about perhaps it's a sort of commemoration that would be like a ritual performance that happens at every Harvest Feast to say, all right, like as we start moving from summer into winter, know that winter is temporary, and even if a calamity like the long night were to happen again, we all are having this feast and we're all feeding each other so we can all have each other's back. Of course, like the irony being, for thousands of years, you might have sang the long night has ended of the Harvest Feast, saying, all right, well, the symbolic veil between the living and the dead is lifting, and nature is going to die and freeze over, but it's not going to be the long night again, right? Right? The irony being this time it was for real. And then, so we're going to be celebrating the last of the clement weather with dance and song, and then perhaps remembering the people in your life that have died, not just like the nature that is going to die and start that cycle again, perhaps in front of a heart tree.
You know, this also makes me think too, like we didn't say it super explicitly before, but a festival doesn't have to be like one day. Like it could be a week or even a season. Like if you think about like Mardi Gras, you know, it doesn't need to be like one day or even 3 days. It could be a week or a month, depending on you know, what the celebration is. And that might actually fit better for Song of Ice and Fire because of the length of their seasons anyway. So it might make more sense to have a longer transition because the seasons transition so much longer.
And I wanted to mention that with all of these imagined feasts of the old gods, we could see a lot of parallels with Western European forms of paganism. I say paganism. If there's a better word to use, I'm open to that word. But Samhain and Mabon were two of the things we were thinking about for the Harvest Feast.
Yeah. So if we are getting some major Mabon and Samhain vibes out of the Harvest Feast, that is like the giant pre-winter feast, like the last party before winter ends, and it's also this recognition that like the clear delineation between the time of the living and the time of the dead is changing. So we need to be on our best behavior and love one another. It kind of taking like two of the spokes of the wheel of the year there on the right and combining it into one old god's holiday. Well, we were thinking, do the changing of the other seasons for those who worship the old gods also combine two other seasons? So that's what we're going to get into. The Winter Feast is let's go right to the Winter Feast then. So the Winter Feast, we're kind of combining Yule and Imbolc. So a big thing with Yule is like letting go of your own darkness. It's like the darkest time of the year, and there's like often a sort of like ritualized like letting go of the darkness inside you for like the void to subsume and take that on for you in order to, you know, you've got enough problems going on in winter as it is. Like you're allowed to like bear your burdens before the darkness and let the darkness swallow that on the darkest night of the year. So I'm even picturing like a sort of like letting go of your darkness in front of the heart tree, not necessarily like we think of like the Catholic confession, like perhaps even more just like you'd see like wailing and keening in front of the heart tree and really like letting your anxieties and your fears out. But we also definitely think there would be lighting candles to bring, like, symbolically bring the light of summer back in this darkest time of the year, the light and the warmth being like a symbolism that we have this power over the oppressive darkness, that like we as a community, as a group, can come together and replace the light that is gone from the world. So we're definitely thinking there would be weather divinations and night fires. Ravens must be huge for this, because like ravens are a big animal for Yule and for the old gods. So in Westeros in general. So there would definitely be some some sort of like rituals involving ravens. We mentioned like Krampus ? Because
Old man Krampus. is
Old
what
man
it is.
Krampus. It's Old man Krampus feast again. Old man does talk, or Bran remembers Old man talking about the thing that comes in the night that punishes unruly children. So maybe that's a parallel with Krampus in the Alps being like the kind of dark foil to Santa Claus, where if you're not on your best behavior, Krampus will put you in a sack and hit you. And so like perhaps at the darkest time of the year and the time that you're supposed to be metaphorically the warmest and brightest, we would see an uptick in the thing that comes in the night stories in order to remind children that I know like it's bad out there, the weather's bad out there, but you're supposed to be acting warm and bright. We kind of are also picturing this as sort of like the July 4th for the long night, that it's this night that is all big and lit up as a sort of commemoration of Old Mampus is canon. It's in A Clash for
Old
Kings.
Mampus.
Yeah.
It's in A Clash of Kings. But kind of like commemorating a historical battle with fireworks on the 4th of July in the United States. We kind of imagine these big night fires and these big rituals as sort of commemorating an ancient battle where the Northmen turned darkness into light.
Yeah.
Let's move to some spring. Lydia, you've got some notes about the spring day.
I do. We think that Spring's Day very likely would have Beltane and Ostara parallels and just be about fertility, be about fecundity, being about animals and people getting it on. I also imagine in relation to the last slide that Spring's Day is probably a really big deal because it means that years of summer are ahead. That's huge.
Yeah.
I imagine dancing around maypoles, which is a tradition in many other countries, actually, around spring and midsummer festivals. The maypole is a phallic symbol. That's related to fecundity, but spiraling around it is the spiral of life. And of course, people who watch the show may make note that those HBO people made use of the spiral symbol for both the children and the others. So I think
the others were like profaning the sacred spiral of the children in the show. So yeah, like an inverted cross, like a spiral spinning the wrong way. Yeah.
Yeah. And we know that guy, Stephen Winnick.
Yeah. There's a lot of
Green
there's
Men.
talk about the Green Men, like the order of the Green Men. We might one day, maybe in dreams, see the Green Men on the Isle of Faces or something.
That would be so cool.
The real
Green Man.
The real Green Men,
Of course.
are sort of these legendary nature beings in the British Isle, and there is a tradition of dressing up like a green man for spring called Jack in the Green. That's Steve, that's our colleague Steve dressing up like a green man for spring, doing Jack in the Green. So that's great. Picture people maybe walking around like Torrens Square or White Harbor in this sort of like foliage costume. I really love the woman on the right there who's from a Beltane celebration, because that looks like she's dressed like a weirwood.
Weirwood.
It looks so great.
So awesome.
Yeah, we have with like the Easter basket comes from the Ostara flower basket. So yeah, we were definitely picturing, like Lydia said, fecundity and life returning and laying flowers all over the grounds of the Godswood. And definitely caps off with a dance party. That's a Beltane dance party in Scotland, in Edinburgh, I believe, where everyone is half naked and painted red, dancing and shouting with fire, which we totally believe is some old gods vibes. Can you imagine a young Brynden Rivers half naked and painted red and shouting and just being like, why would I ever worship the Seven? This is so much cooler.
Yes. Oh my God.
And we've got a last one.
Midsummer.
We got a last one. We got a midsummer feast.
I'm obsessed with these little pastries. Lydia, please.
Just a quick reminder, we're working on 15 minutes left, and we haven't even made it to Ezos.
Whoa, we'll get it.
Yeah,
Essos is
go
going to roll
fast.
by.
Go
Let's do this slide.
So for a midsummer feast, this seems like something that would combine the real world parallels of Litha and Lunasa, also called Lammas. Litha is the summer solstice. It's celebrating the sun's highest peak in the sky. Fire, sun, bonfires, right?
Hot,
The
shiny.
the light is coming back.
Yes.
And this is also a time when honey, starts to become available. And so using that for recipes, making mead, I think would be very important at this time. Lunasa is a grain harvest, and the word Lammas itself means loaf mass. And I was thinking to myself, connecting this with guest right. And when I was doing a search for Lammas, I found this really cool image in the upper right there of these loaves shaped like a woman and like an owl. And they've made the womb and the eyes, respectively, salt cellars. So it's literally bread and salt.
It's
Also,
so cool.
celebrating the harvest by making these corn dollies, which are then, at a later when you come to the autumn again, those are then put back in the earth, and it completes this cycle, the wheel of life. And then last but not least, I was imagining sheep shearing competitions. Sheep shearing is a thing you already have to do, but if you want to make this a celebratory thing, what do? You make it a competition. You make it fun. You make
Make
the
it
work fun.
participatory. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, how else do they get their IKEA rugs sewn to the top of their capes, if not through sheep shearing competition?
Just to say, this is an industry, guys.
All right, Lydia, you ready to move confidently into
Do it.
Essos?
Let's
Do
get
it.
to Essos.
So a lot of what we've noticed so far in Essos is that there's civic festivals that they're like based around like the history of the city.
do the next slide. Yeah.
There we go. Hi, we don't have one for every city. There's lots of big cities in Essos, but and we didn't get into the Dothraki Sea. We have some ideas for Mir and Lys, but we really just like time constraint couldn't really go into Mir and Lys.
Yeah.
Basically, the ones with the most most words written about them in the text are the ones we're going to get into right now, with a bonus at the end.
Bonus.
So let's move into Volantis. They celebrate Founders Day on the anniversary of the founding of the city. 6 chariots race at a time along the Black Walls. And like I mentioned up top, Lydia and I both lived in Indiana, and we see real world, we see strong parallels to the Indianapolis 500.
I am very fast. So
Why
fast.
are those walls black? It's asphalt. That's why.
Yeah, the Black Gates are asphalt. Yeah, it is it is at Volantis Motor Speedway.
Yes.
This is
And
canon.
I think with that, with the Indianapolis 500 coming like Memorial Day and this happening Founders Day, it is like a very much like kind of civic, like patriotic holiday, connecting that to like a race. There's Carb Day is like the big pre-race festival, and like the last day where the race teams are practicing. After they're done, there's a big like drinking like beer and music party that happens. And I know a ton of people who could care less about the race cars, but just love going to Carb Day every year. And I figure like in Volantis, like the Long Bridge is just a giant party for whatever the Founders Day version of Carb Day is going to be.
Pseudo tailgate, perhaps. Not unlike
It's very much like a giant tailgate. Yeah. And then another thing that Lydia and I love about the Indianapolis 500 is that there's so many superstitions.
Sure.
We are just imagining like all the kinds of superstitions you would have at like the Founders Day race with some Indy 500 superstitions. I believe peanuts are bad luck. The winner has to drink milk.
Related to gambling too, on your favorite people, and then those superstitions playing onto who you would or would not vote for, and a certain amount of divination connected to that.
Somebody in the chat, please theory craft some superstitions for Founders Day.
Yeah.
Don't let your horses see each other before the race.
I think people who show up on Carb Day, they kneel down to kiss the black stone.
Yeah. The hippodrome.
I love
Yeah, I think we're being Hoosiers are more familiar with car
Yeah.
races than horse races, but there's
Yeah.
definitely a tradition around racing
Sure.
in various parts of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Next.
Um, Next, we've got
Bravos.
the
Bravo.
uncloaking of Uthero, also called the unmasking of Uthero, on the season 6 history and lore on the Blu-rays, which I still think is Mark Gastis saying the name wrong, and then they had to on the Wikipedia site go the uncloaking and or unmasking of Uthero. But basically, it is the celebration of Bravos revealing its existence to the world after 111 years of clandestine Bravosi activities. And to celebrate that, there's a big 10-day carnival of feasts and masquerades, and at midnight on the 10th day, everyone throws off their mask all at once, and the Titan roars, and they're like the party caps off in the street. George, we get it. Bravos is Venice, from the
Yep.
banking to the canals to now this. George, we were following where you were going with this.
We get
So
it.
here's some images of Venice and Venetian Carnival that look like they could be straight out of the Uncloaking.
Yep.
Yes.
Enough said.
Norvos.
Norvos. Lydia, I think you should get into Norvos.
You may notice that one of these bullet points says Purim with bears. We will get there.
It's a teaser.
This is this feast is mentioned tangentially in an Ariohota POV in A Feast for Crows, and there are these dancing bears. Well, something that we know about Norvos is that it is a theocracy. It's a city that's basically run by priests. And I was thinking to myself about very religious societies, and even the most conservative religious societies have feasts that are social valves in some way. And it may be that those feasts and festivals are commemorating something religious in nature. When you think about Purim, for example, you're thinking about Esther freeing the Jewish people from an abusive power situation, right? And so it's a time of great play. It's a time of bombast in many cases. So we've included a little picture there of a Purim parade in Jerusalem.
The one that's not a bear.
Yeah.
Yes, the one that's not a bear. But I mean, other real world parallels that could involve this are maybe this feast with bears is either a big blowout before a major religious fast, or it's commemorating the end of a religious fast. So, for example, in the real world, this could be the Eid al-Fitr that is after the long fasting period of Ramadan, or this could be the Mardi Gras that precedes Lent, you know? So in my mind, I'm imagining this as being somehow in relationship to a more somber period in the Norvoshi religious cycle.
All right.
Bears notwithstanding, but so in Pentos, what we know is that on the new year, the prince must deflower the maid of the fields and the maid of the seas. So this is very clearly related to fertility. It's related to placation. We want good harvest and we want a calm sea for trade and for our livelihood. There are so many different parallels to this in various cultural traditions throughout the world. But I was thinking specifically of a Mesopotamian, Babylonian, Sumerian ritual called the sacred marriage, or Hieros Gamos. You can also see this most certainly in Beltane as well. There is a fertility goddess, and then there is a king, or there is a fertility god. But in this case, in the Pentoshi context, it's the prince of the city and then these two maids. So Demeter from Greek mythology could certainly be a parallel to the maid of the fields. You could see animal sacrifice being involved in this possibly. For the maid of the seas, I was thinking especially about Yemaya, who is from like Santeria tradition, Candomblé, West African traditions that were imported by means of enslaved people to the New World, as it were.
And I'm pretty sure I experienced a Yemaya festival, which was really cool, where people went out on the beach and like dug holes and put candles in them. In the hole, so like there could be a cool, I don't know, sharing of light to the sea, and then the sea comes up and like ends the candles. It's sort of like returning the light to the sea, maybe thing.
And where were you for that?
I was in Uruguay in South America. So in between Argentina and Brazil. So it made sense. It was during a festival time.
And then we have Black Goat Day.
Yes. I got really excited because when I was looking into this, I thought I found this perfect parallel in an Aztec deity called Tezcatlipoca. But we know that the Cohoric are really big on blood sacrifices. The black goat is all about that blood sacrifice. It does seem like the sacrifices in the Cohoric context are not consensual. Definitely prisoners of war, people who do not want to be sacrificed to the black goat. The Aztec parallels to this seem to have had more consent involved. I don't want to claim to be such an expert here that I know for certain if that was the case 100% of the time. I do believe that there were some prisoners of war who were sacrificed sometimes. But in the case of this particular deity, Tezcatlipoca, he's associated with obsidian, which I thought was very exciting. He's often depicted as missing one of his feet, and sometimes an obsidian dagger is the stand-in for that foot. Also a number of other things like snakes, interestingly. Priests of this tradition and devotees would rub their faces with soot or a black ointment. So the color black is very important here. Obsidian mirrors were used for purposes of divination, but definitely blood sacrifice. And the people who were sacrificed were kind of luxuriously treated and pampered for a whole year in preparation for giving their lives for this. And that was also kind of related to keeping the world cycle going. So that was an exciting parallel.
And speaking of keeping the world cycle going, I'm going to let Relidia handle this. This is the bonus round, not quite one of the free cities.
The bonus round.
But we figured that there must be some sort of like a R'hllor holiday that gets celebrated across the R'hllor worshipping world. Relidia, you've done some research into this, so go ahead.
R'hllor.
Yeah.
Tessa.
Rahala in the chat, everybody.
Yes. It seems very likely this would involve fire. No?
What?
Are we agreed that this would involve fire?
I guess.
So we know that George most certainly was inspired by at least two traditions when he was thinking about R'hlorism as a religion. He was definitely thinking about Catharism, also known as the Albigensians, and he was thinking about Zoroastrianism, which is definitely a living tradition. It's in multiple countries, but it has a real focal point in Iran. So in descriptions of, say, R'hllorist weddings, the bride and the groom jump over a fire together. This is really similar to an actual ritual that happens during Novruz, which is a spring equinox festival. And that fire is cleansing. When you jump over that fire, you're letting go of bad luck. Out with the old, in with the new. And people wait during the celebration of Novruz. People wait for that actual moment that the sun is going to cross the equator to mark that exact moment when there is equal day and night. And you can just imagine that being really important in R'hlorism because there's this eternal battle between R'hllor and the great other. And it would be so important to mark that moment when the light overtakes the dark. That is the victory of the most important central deity in this faith. But interestingly about Novruz, the origins of this holiday are written down in the Shahnameh, which is a Persian poetic epic. And anyway, this This just seems like a one-to-one thing where George like lifted some of these things directly. So this is from the wiki page, not from some great scholarly source. But the Shahnameh credits the foundation of Nowruz to the mythical Iranian king Jamshid, who saves mankind from a winter destined to kill every living creature. To defeat the killer winter, Jamshid constructed a throne studded with gems. He had demons raise him above the earth into the heavens, and there he sat shining like the sun. The world's creatures gathered and scattered jewels around him and proclaimed that this was the new day, the Nowruz. Azora, hi, anybody? Anybody?
Even like you substitute demons for dragons and swords for gems, and it sounds like it sounds like a very deliberate comparison that like Aegon is making to the people who would get the reference.
Yeah. And also during Nowruz, the 4 elements are kind of commemorated by means of the Haftzin table that's made in people's homes, and the number. Also, 3 kinds of creatures are commemorated there: humans, animals, and plants. So this is definitely about a connection to nature and these elements. But I certainly imagine that in the R'hllorist context, fire is given the primary place of honor here. So that's what we have.
Two things I want to ask. Number one, Matt in the chat asked about the Wildfire Festival. That was I understand that that
happened in
Jaehaerys of House Rule was involved in promoting that festival, but it was way overrated. And then Lydia, what can you say about the Nowruz altar real quick? Do you have a picture of that?
Yeah. So the number 7 is important, but that's like the 4 elements plus the 3 kinds of conscious creatures in this tradition. But all of the things that are on this table are kind of about life and rebirth. So there will be at least 1 plant on the table here. It looks like there's grass. There is also a little goldfish. That's a big thing. And then water, fire, earth, and air are all on there in some capacity. And then this will take on variations depending on where it's celebrated. This is celebrated in other Central Eurasian countries like Azerbaijan. So you might have some locally specific things. Eggs may also be involved there. That is a symbol of fertility in so many world cultures. And it's about new beginnings as well.
So that was our last slide, but if anyone has a Q&A, please hit us up in the chat. We can answer some questions. Supported by Daisy. Daisy made all of these slides so beautiful. Daisy, you say that, but you were really the you're the glue. But
I wanted to make it cool for reviewing purposes.
I think it worked.
I'm shocked we fit this in an hour, you guys.
I'm shocked too.
Our dress rehearsal took 2 hours, but we kept getting off topic.
Yeah.
We kept just saying, "Oh, this other thing I read about is so cool," and then 15 minutes later, what were we talking about? Oh, spring.
Yeah. We have time for 5 minutes of Q&A. It looks like if anybody has questions. But yeah, thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah.
Do we want to do some plugs while we're waiting for questions?
Well, there's one question, kind of. Guilty Undertaker asks, do the Volantines wear silly hats to the horse races?
I like this idea.
I do too.
The Hoosiers wear silly hats to the races as well.
Yeah. We can plug other stuff though too. I think wrap up. People don't have other questions.
I'd like to see like a different color of monkey tail on the hat, like represents a different like affiliation with a certain race team.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Oh, what religion would you follow if you could choose?
Oh.
Oh,
tough.
I would have to say I'd have to say R'hllor, because R'hllor gets shit done.
That's true.
Yeah, the
at what cost though?
The cost of getting shit done.
I feel like I will
not answer questions about Shireen Baratheon at this time. Thank you.
I feel like I'm more of an old gods person. I think it's isolated in a way, and I kind of
Mhm.
like I'm a big fan of nature
Contained.
ritual. So
I kind of second that. I also really like the old gods. I like the relationship to the heart trees and the hints that we're getting in there about the relationship of the children
yeah,
to that deeper storyline. But maybe I'm also very interested in the Bravosi, uh, the faceless men, and how there are so many religions present there too.
yeah,
Sure. Yeah, there's so many
Mhm.
temples in Bravos. Like temples that for gods that have like 6 worshipers, but they still get a temple in Bravos. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm. I'm definitely in this series for
Yeah.
for the religion and the magic and the world building.
yeah.
And I see, Pat in the chat says all about rule or anything but the 7. And I do think that is a side effect of like George like unloading his youthful Catholic angst on the 7.
It's so
Like
true.
creating a religion to be like what it's like being a Catholic teenager. Or at least as with my childhood, that's how I read the faith of the 7.
Guilty Undertaker says in Bravos, you can have a temple in some dude's basement.
Yeah, that's chill. You have the temple of the Lord of Couches in my friend's basement, and everyone passes out on the couch, and you wake up to the DVD menu of the movie you were watching, and it's all part of the ritual.
Exactly.
Or a psychedelic vision. Who's to say?
But I think one precedes the other.
Probably.
Well, thanks everyone for watching us.
Yeah,
Let us
May
know
the
what
Lord
you
of
think
Light
of the
bless you all.
let us know what you think of the theory crafting, and if you have other ideas or want to add to it in the Discord or
If you know more
wherever,
about any of
yeah.
faith world traditions and you want to share from your knowledge and experience,
yeah, tell us because we could keep talking about this forever.
where can
Mhm.
people find us individually or on Twitter or where we do Song of Ice and Fire things? Where can we be found to communicate about this?
Yeah, let's see. My Twitter and my Instagram, which is probably where I post the most, is at HeyDomT, HeyDomt. Lydia, should we plug your amazing Instagram?
I just mostly put cosplay pictures in there, but I am
That's
at
what I meant.
Sewing Strong.
Sewing Strong.
Mhm.
And Daisy or Lydia's Amethyst Empress. I mentioned the
Yeah,
other night. It's Skelly,
so
maybe my
good.
all-time favorite Ice and Fire Con
So
cosplay.
good.
So specific, so good.
Yeah. And I'm at Thyla_Daisy, THYLA_DAISY on like everything. So
and we should also say that Daisy and I host a Twitch show every Tuesday night.
Yep.
Where we play video games that have to do with folklore and traditions, and interview a guest who studies that kind of thing, or studies like the folklore we're talking about in the video game.
the
You can find us.
the thematically related elements to their field of research and interest. It's pretty fun.
Mostly we play I've been describing it as we play video games and accidentally teach you things.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can find us there at twitch.tv/folkwise, FOLKWISE, folkwise. And
We post we post all the highlight reels to YouTube under the same channel name too, Folkwise. So if you want to catch up or see what we do, you can check those out as well.
And Daisy and I are there every Tuesday night.
We're gonna play Death and Taxes next week.
Yeah, it's Death and Taxes this week with a folklorist who studies death.
Yeah.
The Stranger has come for us on stream this week. And and this panel will be for everyone who's watching this on the YouTube channel later after the con. I can't wait to see you in 2021. And hop in the Discord. Let us know how we did. Talk to us.
Yeah.
Pick our brains. We'll pick yours. We love this kind of thing. And
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching, everyone.